Hello, sorry. My name is Ten. So this is going to be a 30-minute session about pragmatic OKRs. So this is a masterclass, and the goal of this is to give you an OBS. Okay, I'll use another word, a really efficient OKR process, and this is what we'll cover as part of a session. So number one, so we'll look at a definition of OKRs, and the idea is to really help you understand the difference between OKRs and projects. Then we'll look at the difference between OKRs and KPIs, what makes OKRs difficult to adopt. And the second part of the masterclass is going to be around giving you a set of tools, best practice, principles, and also a quick guide on how you can use the OKRs in an effective way and create a simple OKR plan. Okay, so I'll jump right in. I know that you don't have much time, so I'll try to keep this one short. All right, so the first question for us is to understand what OKRs are about. And I'm assuming here that you know that the acronym stands for objectives and key results. But when I explain OKRs to teams, I like to keep projects as part of the picture. And that's because quite often you come from a place where projects were the main focus of the team, whether you talk about deadlines or you have roadmap reviews, and things get flipped around a little bit with the OKR framework. So when you do use OKRs, projects end up at the end. But let me start with the objectives first. So the purpose of your objectives, it is to set the direction for the team, right? So you're at the beginning of the quarter, and a good objective should help the team understand what you want to see, what you want to be different at the end of the quarter. And this is not really about the business as usual. It's more about understanding, for instance, we want to get so much better at customer retention, or we want to have happy customers. It's something that is not happening today, and you want it to be true in 3 months. Now, your key results, they're here to help you measure progress on your objectives. A good set of key results should help you build confidence during the quarter that you're getting closer and closer to achieving your objective. So objectives, it's really about answering the question like, where are we going? And your key results, it's about answering the question, are we on track? Or how far have we gone? Now, to think about the project, so the big difference between the projects and why a project cannot be a key result is that a project is a bet you make to move forward on your key results, to move the needle. So some of the projects you pick, they're going to work. They're going to produce the results that you want, and some of the projects are not going to work, right? And it's because, it's not always easy to understand what people want. And that's okay. So this is a bit abstract, but I'm going to give you an example here, which is hopefully going to make all of this clearer. So let's say that we're part of a team, and we have to create an OKR for ourselves. And so we start thinking about it, and then we come up with the objective to integrate with Stripe. So you can start to feel the problem with that objective, because when we think about the key results, like how do we understand during the quarter that we're making progress toward that Stripe integration? It's pretty much binary, like it's either done or not done. And same thing as the projects that can help us get there. It feels like, we would have to break this down to really low-level engineering tasks. So this is not quite what we want as an objective. And the way for us to get back to what the real objective is to often, the simplest way is to ask why. Why are we doing this? Why do we want to integrate with Stripe? And so if you ask this question, maybe once or twice, you're going to get to this result, right? It's like the reason why we want to get a Stripe integration is because we want to be able to start charging people. So the real objective is to get paid customers. Maybe we're in a beta and we haven't charged people yet, and so we want people to be able to start paying. So what we want at the end of the 3 months is to have a set of paid customers. That's the direction. Now it becomes easier for us to track that, to understand mid-quarter, have we made some significant progress toward getting paid customers? And that's because we can just look at how much revenue we have. We can look at the number of upgrades, or we can just also look at leading indicators like, how many people are starting a trial with us. And then in this model, so the Stripe integration, it's just one of the things that we can do to get paid customers. Now, there are a few things here that are interesting about the difference between our previous objective and this objective here. is that number one, this objective here, like it really feels like it's something for the engineering team. And so if I'm part of marketing or I'm part of sales, I look at this and I'm like, well, that doesn't have anything to do with me. So I'll just forget about that. I'll focus on other things. But if you say to the company, hey, we're trying to get paid customers. Now, many teams can look at that and be like, oh, maybe that's something that I can contribute to. So engineering, right, is trying to integrate with Stripe, but your marketing team can think about a campaign they can do. Even your support team can think about like, hey, if people, we can have some playbook to maybe push people to get some of the paid features that we have in the product. So, a good OKR should be able to talk to as many teams as possible, right? Because then this is how you align people. It's like instead of having something that concerns just one team, you have like an objective that many people can rally around, and that's going to maximize your result at the end of the quarter. Another thing that is important here is like this objective. Let's say that the way our business works is quite complex, and so Stripe is not quite the right way for us to charge people because there's some limitation, right? We don't have to discuss the details, but imagine your team comes back to you 1 or 2 months in and says, hey, it's really hard to do that thing with Stripe. Well, because we said that the objective was to integrate with Stripe, they're still going to obsess over this. They're going to try. And so at the end of the 3 months, you'll have not much to show. Whereas in here, we said to the team, we want to get paid customers. And so your product team, your engineering team, they're going to try to do that Stripe integration. Then 3-4 weeks in, they're going to come back to you and say, hey, look, we're not making any progress on this. It's really difficult. What should we do? Well, first of all, you can tell them, hey, integrating with Stripe is just a bit, like maybe there's another payment provider that we can use. But the other thing is that you can also turn to the team and say, hey, we're going to pick up the phone, call our customers, and then set them up manually. We're going to charge them manually until we have something that can be automated. Because what matters is not to integrate with Stripe. What matters is to get paid customers. So that's super important here. It's like the way you frame your OKRs is going to have a huge impact on what your team can deliver and how creative they can be with the solutions. Okay, so what's important here, maybe as a reminder, not a reminder, but as a conclusion. So you really want your objectives to be solid. They shouldn't move during the quarter. So the only reason why an objective is going to change is because something like huge happened and your entire strategy needs to change, right? And as a result, then your OKRs don't make sense anymore. What happened with COVID, for instance. So this is a reason for your objectives to maybe change. Your key results, it's more likely that you'll see some key results that are going to be modified during the quarter. And that's because, let's say, I'll give you an example. Say that we say, we really want to have happy customers. Well, happiness is really hard to track and to measure. And so you might have something where you say like, oh, we're going to use some kind of NPS, and then we're going to use like another metric. And then as you start tracking your metrics or tracking your key results, you're going to realize that some of them are not really good at informing you on happiness. So you might want to change that, or you might want to drop it, right? So, and that's okay. But the big thing that I really want to put an emphasis on here is that you need to treat your projects as bets. Don't get attached to them, right? It's like your projects are here to help you move the needle in the right direction. Okay, I think you can say that. Like, sorry, I'm French. So your projects, some of them are going to work and you should double down on them. Some of the projects you have are not going to work. That's okay. You need to, let them go. And that's perhaps a big difference between, like a pre-OKR team and a team that uses OKRs. All right. Next is OKRs versus KPIs. So I know that there's, because we've been posting, a lot of resources around OKRs versus KPIs, and there's probably some of the most popular things that we have. So there seem to be some kind of, maybe not confusion, but questions around the difference between OKRs and KPIs. And the best way for me to explain that is to show you this graph, which is going to simplify everything. And then I'll go back into like why, KPIs and OKRs are different. So in a company, so you have your vision at the top, and that usually sits in the document management system. So it can be your Confluence, your Notion. And that's like a long post, right? It's like it explains where we want to be in 5 years. And it's like, it's really exciting. This is what we want to do. This is where we want to be. Then out of a vision, you're going to have like a set of, like your KPIs, basically, it's a set of metrics that define your business. That, you know, it's like those are the core numbers, metrics that are important for us. And usually this is in the spreadsheet somewhere. You may or may not have some targets associated with your KPIs, but usually what I see is like people have like, hey, those are the things we want to track, and that measures the health of the business. Now, at the bottom, you have your projects, and your projects are in Jira, ClickUp, Linear. And so what's missing, you know, it's like something that can help take like that grand vision that is like really high level, and help us understand what are the best projects that we can do like on a quarterly basis, like help us pick the right things for us to deliver on that vision. And so this is the purpose of OKRs. It's to take something that is really high level and turn it into like a set of, you know, like a quarterly focus, like a small quarterly plan that then the team can look at to understand, well, if that's what we want to do, this is what the part of the vision we want to achieve now, those are the things we can do to get there, right? So OKRs are here. And by the way, so us, we're Tability, and so we sit here. This is where our platform lives. Now, what's confusing sometimes is that when you write down your OKRs, it can feel like you're actually tracking your KPIs because they can use the same metrics, right? It's like one of your KPI might be retention, and your OKRs is like improve retention from X to Y. But the purpose of OKRs and KPIs is different. So your KPIs, it's really about, it's like a set of metrics that help you understand the health of a system. So it's like the health of the entire company, the health of the entire team. It's really about monitoring, and usually you don't really use KPIs to decide what the roadmap is. Like your KPIs are more here for you to track things on a monthly basis. And if things are really going haywire, right? It's like your one of your KPI in the company can be like team happiness, employee NPS. And if this goes like super low, then this is where you say to everyone, hey, stop, you know, we need to have like a look at this. On the other hand, your OKRs are specifically about like taking a part of your system and making it different, like improving it. And so it's about like, for instance, it's about setting new baselines, right? So your KPIs can have like retention, number activation metrics, number of customers that come in, and your OKRs are going to be like, hey, do you know what? Like this quarter, we want activation to go from this number that goes like this to a new baseline. So we're going to focus our energy here. So to give you a graph, so imagine your system is that big circle. So your KPIs, they have a pink part, right? They have a part that helps you understand, maintain confidence that everything, the business as usual, is going well. And from one quarter to another quarter, so you're going to have like a small set of OKRs that are going to focus on a specific part of that system and say, hey, we want this to be much better. And then the next quarter, this circle might be somewhere else, right? So that's what OKRs look like. I'm not going to talk about the entire table. I'm going to try to make sure you can download this somewhere. But so a few key differences is really your KPIs are just quantitative. Like it's a set of metrics. It's in a spreadsheet. There's no like real, like when you track it on a monthly basis and you just put the new number. Like there's no comment or discussion usually that says like, oh, this metric moved like that, and so this is why, and this is what we're going to do about it. OKRs are really different in that way. It's like OKRs also have a quantitative aspect because you keep tracking of, you know, how your key results are moving. But really, you meant to explain why it's moving the way it's moving, and what are you going to do, or what do you need to do to take it to the end goal, right? So it's much more about like having a discussion on things, and the tracking happens on a weekly basis. The last part is like your KPIs. You know, you want them to be stable. You don't want to change them every week, every month. Like they're meant to be like probably, you know, they can stick around for years. And your OKRs, they're going to change every quarter, because every quarter you're going to say like, hey, this quarter we focus here, and next quarter we focus there. You can have some overlap from one quarter to the other, but usually we see a lot of changes. Okay, so now let's look into what makes OKRs difficult to adopt. So there's a great post on Medium that says OKRs are hard, and this is written by someone who's really good at it, like a seasoned OKR practitioner. And the post is great because it pretty much says like, don't give up, because even for me, even me as a someone who's used OKR a lot, it's still difficult to do like A grade OKRs, but even if and not perfect, they still have a lot of value. So you can look, search for OKRs are hard on Medium, and this is a great post. But what I like about it is because I see a lot of teams giving up on OKRs too quickly because they try it and they realize, oh, it's difficult and it's not perfect. But the idea is not perfection. The idea is to have like a set of, have clarity. It's to have a good understanding of how the business is going. And if you see discrepancies in OKRs, it's not like those things didn't exist before, it's that you can see them now. I'll come back to this in a little bit. But what makes OKRs difficult in practice, what I've seen, is that a lot of people get bought into the theory of OKRs. They read the books, they read Measure What Matters. I highly recommend, if there's one book you need to read, I highly recommend to read Radical Focus. And so you read the book and then you come back, and then the problem is that there's not a standard way to implement OKRs. And so teams are a little bit left to on-device, I think basically teams have to figure out how to implement OKRs. And so the lack of standards means that if you have like 12 teams, you're going to have 12 different spreadsheets and 12 different ways for people to do the tracking and the scoring. And so what is supposed to, bring clarity brings like confusion, because you go from one team to the other and things, yes, people are saying objectives and yes, people are saying key results, but it looks a little bit different from one team to the other. So the lack of standard brings, friction. The second part, which is super important, if you track your OKRs on a monthly basis, it's actually going to lose 90% of its usefulness. And you need to be able to do weekly, your team should be doing weekly check-ins, but more importantly than that, it should be super easy for teams to do weekly check-ins. Like, one of the reasons why a lot of teams hate OKRs is because it feels like a chore. It feels like another reporting chore that is just for management. We don't understand why we need to do this. And people are not getting any value out of that. Like, management gets some clarity because everybody's forced to do the updates, but it doesn't come from a place of the team thinking that this is a valuable thing for them, because it actually takes a lot of time for them to do that. So it feels like a pain. And so the lack of updates, it's also a problem. It makes OKRs difficult. If you don't use it on a weekly basis, as I said, you're going to lose a lot of value. And the last point is the lack of clarity around scoring and tracking. So the scoring thing, there's obviously, Google has made OKR super popular. And one issue that I have with that is they have this specific way for them to score things because it's part of a culture where 70% means great. But for most companies, 100% means great. And so having this weird dual, kind of like a grading system in a company where it might be that bonuses, they start to be given in the company when people get to 80% to 100% of the goals. But then when they look at OKRs, people are saying oh, your OKRs, if you do more than 70%, then it means that you didn't push hard enough. So you should aim for 60 to 70% completion. This is going to confuse a lot of people. All right. So another thing, right, which is super important. If you're a leader watching this, if you're a manager and you're introducing OKRs to your team because you feel like this is great, it gives clarity, it's going to help you set the direction, help everyone understand what they need to focus on. The value that OKRs has for you is not the same as how your team is going to perceive it. Usually this is what I see happening. As I said, you're in leadership, and so for you it feels amazing. You're like, oh, I'm gonna get better visibility. I have 6 to 10 teams to look at. There's gonna be it's gonna be much easier to align people. It's data driven. There's a clear set of goals, and people, this outcome driven thing that everybody is talking about. This is us making a great step toward that. But the second problem, not the second problem, like the problem is that if you talk to your team and you just ask them how it feels, and I was in this position, I was a product manager in Atlassian and the company adopted OKRs, and it felt like a lot more reporting. It also, at the beginning, it felt like, oh, you want to micromanage me? You're going to give me now, not only did you tell me what task, what my roadmap was about, but now it's also the goals, etc. And so it felt like more pressure. It didn't feel like a good thing. So my point with this is that there's a lot of good things to the team about the OKR framework, but you can't pitch to the team the things that are great for you as a leader, because what needs to be pitched to the team is something quite different. For instance, instead of talking about visibility, talk about traceability, right? Because one thing that people care about as a team is like, we achieve a lot of great things, but they're not seen by management. Well, now OKRs make that super easy to do, because we are going to agree on the goals. We are going to agree on the outcomes. And I can now demonstrate that I'm achieving, as a team, we're achieving the outcomes that we've decided. Another one, for instance, it's not about more pressure. It's about ownership, right? It's like, as management is going to spend much less time looking at the roadmap and more time talking about the goals, which means that as a team, I'm empowered to decide the best way to achieve the goals that we have. So it's about increased ownership. It's about creating accountability and trust. And that you pick the solution. That's also a great way to explain the value of OKRs. It's like, we're not going to talk about the roadmap as much. We're not going to discuss like what's in the backlog, etc. We're going to discuss what we want to achieve, and you're able to pick the right solution for it. And this is something that usually teams really love, because, well, this is what you've hired them, because they have that expertise. They know how to deliver stuff, how to figure out how to fix a problem or deliver a specific set of outcomes. Okay, so that's the second part of the talk. So here I'm going to talk about the key principle that we have in our system that we call flowing OKRs. So the first principle is that you really want to have those fast feedback loops. I said it in the, I think it was 2 or 3 slides ago. One thing that makes OKRs difficult for teams is that we still see many teams that adopt OKRs, they set some goals, and then the way they track goals is like once a month. And this means that I'm going to give you a graph that illustrates that. But so like weekly check-ins, what they help you do is to have like enough data points that you can understand when things are not going too well and fix things before it gets too late. So when I see a company using a spreadsheet to track OKRs, and they do that on a monthly basis as well, this is the problem that you're going to be facing. So you're going to look at things in a table like this, and mid-quarter, you might see something like this. We want to achieve like 150 emails sent in a survey. And so then you're going to see that the team is at 57% done, which is like, above, like more than halfway done at half of a quarter. So this looks good until you plot this on the graph. And plotting it on a graph and looking at the previous iteration of that goal, that you can have like often a situation that looks like this, where you have a hot start. Well, here it doesn't kind of like make sense with 157 emails, but you might have like other goals where things look like this, where you have a hot start, and then things don't look as good as you move into the quarter. So in practice, it looks like something like this. It looks like a goal where your team, had a hot start, and then you're starting to go a little bit flat, like increasing the number of weekly active users. It's really important for you to be able to have that picture if you want to have effective OKRs. You need to have weekly check-ins, right? So I'm going to insist on that again, because that's what makes the difference between a team that uses OKRs as a tool to inform what to do on a weekly basis. Like they can react to the state of things. And a team that just has OKRs more as a, it's like reporting activity that happens like once a month. The second principle, so it's really important for you to think about that relationship between outcomes and output, not as a directional thing where you have OKRs and therefore, it informs the roadmap and that's it. It's like you are meant to learn from what's happening. And so this is why, once again, that weekly cycle is important, because you're setting yourself some goals. Like I talked about the beginning about like that sometimes, you'll have bad key results. You might see, for instance, like, hey, we want to increase, like your objective is to get more users on your platform, and then you're tracking signups. And so you keep tracking signups, and then you realize that actually, yes, you're getting more signups, but you're not necessarily getting people that stick to the product. And so that is what is going to help you refine what the key result should have been, and say like, oh, instead of signups, maybe we should look at actually the number of new active users that we get on a weekly basis. Third principle, it's really about, you need to make sure that your team feels safe enough to report bad news. Like OKRs is not about saying like, hey, you're yellow or red, and so therefore you're doing a bad job. It's about getting visibility across the company and transparency. So teams should feel like saying that they're getting at risk or saying that they're getting off track is a good thing. You want to encourage people. It's not about like saying like, hey, you shouldn't try to fix things. It's more about giving people like a sense of, it's like they need to have like that safety, that they feel like they don't have to wait the end of a quarter to tell you that something is red. You want them to come to you early with like risk, so that people can rally and fix things before it's too late. The second part of it, right, is like you want to treat things like conversations. Like good OKRs, a good OKR flow is an OKR flow where on a weekly basis, people are reporting progress on the key results. But the way you report progress on the key result is not just by saying, the number of NPS just moved from like 15 to 30. You need to explain what you've done to move NPS up to 30. You need to explain what needs to be done to keep moving that NPS number to the actual target. So this needs to be a conversation. It needs to be more than just like capturing metric in a spreadsheet. Okay, so now we're 26 minutes in. I'm going to give you a set of practical tips, and then we're going to end up with a guide, a simple guide for you to create an OKR plan. So the first tip, and you can see that there's a theme for this presentation, and it's about like making sure that you can have a weekly updates on your OKRs. It's important to have like a ritual in your company that looks like this. So every week, you're going to start the week by having a OKR review on a Monday. And the reason why you want to do that on a Monday is because you want everybody to have the right context in mind during the week. If you set this meeting on a Wednesday or on a Thursday, I can guarantee you that Monday and Tuesday, people are going to work on things that are not aligned with the OKRs. So what you want to do is like make sure that people can have like a great weekend. Then when they come back, the first thing we talk about are the goals of the company, the goals of the team, and we're gonna review how much progress we've done, and it's going to help people understand like what things are green, and that's okay. We can keep going, but especially like understand all things that are getting yellow, all things that are getting red, and if that's the case, it's like what do we need to do differently? And it's not about like disrupting the roadmap every week, but it's more about having a shared understanding of, what the reality is. That meeting doesn't need to be big. Like don't make it a 1 hour and a half with like the entire company. I like to scope it to, it's like maybe there's like the product team has their own OKR meeting. The marketing team has their own OKR meeting. At a company level, maybe you do that like once a month, but if the leadership team can meet on a weekly basis to talk about their own OKRs for the company, then that's great as well. And you can keep it to half an hour because since it's going to happen every week, it actually, maybe the first meeting is going to be a little bit longer, but as you move toward moving the quarter, it becomes a habit and people know exactly what is in the OKRs and never forget it. And it's going to be like a very effective and rapid meeting. Number 2, do not cascade OKRs. If you read Measure What Matters, there's a great example about like a football team. But that example is I take it as like a great way to have a simple explanation of the value of OKRs. But in reality, it's really hard for teams to have something that cascades perfectly. I know that it feels great from a management perspective. If you're in leadership, it feels like your entire company is mapped out really well. But more often than not, the key results for OKRs at the top of the company, they're about number of customers, sales metrics, basic, happiness metrics. And it can be really hard for other teams to just look at that and really cascade from it. A design team, a design group is not going to be able to take like revenue and be like, oh, okay, I know exactly what I want to do. The other problem with this is that if you made a mistake at the top, and we talked through this presentation about how easy it is to have like an OKR plan that is not correct. So if you make a mistake at the top, it means that the entire tree is also wrong. And so cascading OKRs, first of all, it's extremely costly to maintain. It's difficult for the team. It puts a lot of onus on the team to like be in a tool, in a spreadsheet and connect everything all the time. A better way to do things is to have a model that aligns OKRs. And what I mean by that is like, instead of doing this, where your OKR becomes an O, etc., create a clear set of OKRs at the top, and trust the teams that, if they look at the set of OKRs, they can create their own OKRs with their own O's and own KRs that respects the spirits of these OKRs. And it should be then super easy for you to be able to compare things. But, it's like, don't do this. Don't do the strict, like this KR should become an O for team. And if not, then it's a failure. That's impractical and not realistic. It's better for you to say like, here's a set of OKRs. Now that you understand what the OKRs are about at the top of the company, you can create your OKRs underneath. And that team that is 2 layers under, they're going to look at the OKRs of the company, the OKRs of the department, or the team above them, and then try to do the same, right? So rely on the great humans that you have in your company to interpret things in the right way and create things that make sense. So what it looks like in practice, it looks like something like this, right? Where you don't need to connect things like one by one. You can just have a plan here, you can have a plan there, and you can just like compare plans together to make sure that it makes sense. That's our platform, Tability. The last one, so do not do individual OKRs. And so what I mean by individual OKRs is when you have like company OKRs, then you go down to department OKRs, team OKRs, and then you go individual OKRs. The reason why you do not want to do individual OKRs is because it's really hard at an individual level to not mix up your team goals and your personal goals. When you keep things at a team level, it's really clear that the goals in there, they're like the teams, like the goals that are going to help us. It focuses on the business, it focuses on customers, it focuses on things that can help the team. But if I'm, for instance, let's say that I'm in customer support and I want to move into marketing. Now, I'm going to have like a set of goals, like maybe 70% of my goals are customer support goals. They're here to help, me do a great job as part of the customer support team. But then I'm going to have like 30% of my goals that are about like preparing myself for that transition into marketing. Like, how can I become a better marketer or just learn the ropes? And so if you're part of customer support and then you try to trickle down things and look at, my goals, you're going to be confused because you'll be like, oh, why do you have like so many things that don't relate to our team? And so that's my advice to you. It's like, don't try to, create like individual OKR levels. I do not think that it adds that much value. I'm going to write a post about like individual versus personal OKRs. I feel like it's fine if you want to have like personal goals written as OKRs, but I would not attach them to the rest of the OKRs that exist, right? It's something separate. It's your personal thing between you and your manager. It's not part of the, that tree of different OKRs that you have in the company. All right. We're getting to the end of the session. So the last part of it, it's going to be how to quickly create an OKR plan. This is going to be quick and easy. Don't worry. It's only going to take, I think there's 3 or 4 steps to it. Okay, so step 1, you're gonna take, the first step is to identify some themes. So, and to identify themes, like I have a trick, I usually use the R funnel. And so the R funnel, it's also called the Pirate Matrix, and it divides your customer journey into 5 stages that are here. So you have acquisition, which is like how many people like find out your website and sign up. Activation is like basically the steps to become an activated customer. Retention is like how many of those users like come back like on a daily or weekly basis. How many people do they bring them with referral, and then revenue, which is like, okay, how many of these people like turn into paying customers. So what I like about this framework is that each letter, right, corresponds to a part of a journey. And so the idea is like figure out which letters you want to focus on. Do you want to focus on retention or referral or revenue, etc.? And so if, you know, this framework, like if you're part of, for instance, like a different team, like, and that framework doesn't speak to you, like you're in design and you're like, well, you know, revenue doesn't really make sense for us. Just look for another type of framework that does the same, right? It's like an acronym. Each letter means something different. So in design, the HEART framework stands for happiness, engagement, adoption, retention, and task success. And so you can do the same where you say, this quarter, what do we want to focus on? Where do we think that we're lacking? There's the same thing in engineering, growth, etc. So you start by picking 1 or 2 letters. Now, let's say that, for instance, in the case of our team, we decided that we want to focus on activation. So activation is our theme. So the next step is to understand what are going to be our success metrics for activation. And so to do this, so what I would do is like not try to identify right off the bat, you know, it's like I want to pick those like 2-3 metrics. I go from like, okay, so activation is something we want to focus on. First step is to list all the activation metrics that we can think about to have something exhaustive, right? And it can go from how many visitors to your website like end up signing up, how many steps do you have to activate, the amount of daily active users, or looking at your drip feed, you know, what's the open rate on the emails that we send once you sign up. Once you have enough of these things, this is where you have a discussion with your team to understand, hey, okay, activation, it means all of these things, all of these success metrics. And this is kind of like the KPIs, right? KPIs for activation. Now, where do we want to focus on? And in this case, same thing, we're part of a team, and when we end up saying, do you know what? We're just going to focus on the part of activation, which is right after sign up. Is like, how do we make sure that our onboarding is really good? And so what we're going to track all of those 3 things. We want to improve onboarding completion rate. We want to improve how much time it takes for people to activate. And we're going to also like bring some, happiness metric, like how satisfied are people with the onboarding process. So you end up with something that looks like this. So you do have a theme at the top, which is activation, and you have like 3 metrics: onboarding completion rate that you want to improve, time to activate, and onboarding satisfaction score. That's it. So now you can just turn this into OKRs, and it's really quick. For you take your metrics and you say, I want to improve that metric from X to Y. And it gives you something like this. So obviously at the objective level, so what you need to do is to have something that is probably, make more sense to people by saying something like boost activation by improving the post sign-up experience. So we're fleshing out that activation theme by explaining which part of activation we want to focus on. And underneath, we have the key results that are going to help us measure progress during the quarter, right? So we want to improve onboarding completion rate from 45% to 70%, reduce time to complete activation, etc. And so every week, we're going to measure progress on these different key results. And out of these key results, we're going to have like a set of projects that we believe are going to help us, make progress, etc. And so now we're like into the OKRs process that has been described before. Okay, so that's it for this presentation. So we do have a full flowing OKR, guys. I think it has 14 or 15 rules that can help you. Rules and it's basically best practices and tips to help you have like a effective OKR process. you can go to tinyurl.com/flowing OKRs, and you can find these tips. And if you want to profile, sorry, I'm getting to the end of it. So if you're looking for a platform that makes this entire thing like much easier, check out our platform. Go to Tability.io, and you'll find a tool that can really help take the pain out of the OKR process. But also it gives you a tool that is going to give you like true visibility on progress, which is for me the most important part of all of this. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.